Welcome, Pewter Report readers, viewers, and listeners to a brand new edition of the Pewter Report podcast, energized by Celsius, the official energy drink of PewterReport.com. It is a Thursday edition of the show. Hope everybody had a very Merry Christmas, a Happy Hanukkah, and Happy Holidays to whatever you are celebrating. We are back for our second episode this week, obviously with the holidays. Changing things up, switching things up a little bit, but very happy to be back and talking about your Tampa Bay Buccaneers as they go round 2 with the Carolina Panthers, and we shall see if the Bucs can come out on top again and keep their playoff hopes alive. So we got a lot to get into on today's show, including a guest that will be joining us for the beginning of the show as well. I'm your host, Matt Matera. Joined with me is my fellow colleague and co-host of the Pewter Report podcast, Adam Slavon. Adam, how are we doing?
Matt, we're doing great. It's great to be back on post-Christmas, talking about some Bucs football and the latest happenings around the team. Spoke to Liam Cohen, Casey Rogers today, and really just getting ready to prepare and preview this matchup against the Panthers, because the Panthers, they've been playing some good football, Matt. They recently beat the Cardinals. They had an impressive showing, especially on the ground. Bryce Young looks to be in the swing of things with Dave Canales, and just kind of going over what the Bucs need to do to finish this season off strong.
Yeah, I think it's going to be another tough matchup, and we'll talk about some of the injury updates and what Liam Cohen had to say today later on in the show, because joining us for today, he is a Panthers writer at the Panthers Wire, covering the team. He's been on the show before, so very happy to have him back on. It's Jared Feinberg. Jared, how you doing? Thank you so much for joining us today.
I'm doing good. Thank you, guys. Happy holidays.
Happy holidays. You as well. So let's get into this matchup. I mean, first of all, it's crazy to think that on the first day of this month of December was when the Bucs and the Panthers went toe-to-toe in a game that ended up with the Bucs winning in overtime, but barely coming out unscathed thanks to a forced fumble, by Anthony Nelson. So within, that first matchup between the Buccaneers and now with Bucs-Panthers round 2, what has been the biggest difference, the biggest change for this Panthers team that has played better down the stretch, not winning all the time, obviously won last week against Arizona, but from what you've seen, what has made this team be such a pesky opponent down the stretch?
I think they're realizing, they're not going to be in playoff contention. And Jadeveon Clowney in the locker room today was just talking about how they knew, like several weeks ago, they knew they weren't going to be in the playoffs. So they were like, all right, let's play our best football. Let's go out there and just play the sport we love. And it's just a group of guys that love the sport, love playing the game. They don't do it just for the money. They love this thing. And shout out to Dave Canales for really making this group a competitive one, especially after ringing off a couple wins as Bryce Young returned to the starting lineup. Speaking of Bryce Young, he's been one of the big reasons why this team has seen such a resurgence. And I'll even admit that he was a big reason why the team had their lackluster performance against the Dallas Cowboys a couple weeks ago. 4 turnovers, a career high. And then this past weekend, overtime victory, 36-30 over the Arizona Cardinals, knocking them out of the playoff contention or eliminating them from the playoffs entirely. You see a Bryce Young that is learning and getting more confident with each game and learning from his mistakes, rebounding from those terrible interceptions that he threw against Dallas, and then coming back and making some nice throws. And he made some great throws against the Arizona Cardinals, some that helped this team win the game. Now, did he miss some throws? Absolutely. But this is a quarterback that I think we need to stop trying to make everything perfect about him and understand what he brings to the table. And that's bringing that clutch gene that he always had at Alabama. And it's now starting to translate once he's come off the bench. And it's been great to see this rejuvenated, this basically reformed Bryce Young. And it's a big reason why the Panthers are in this position of potentially playing spoiler to the Buccaneers and next week against the Atlanta Falcons. This this is an interesting time for Panther fans, and it's got them really intrigued about seeing how this season ends. If they can get to the end, or they finish the year on a strong high note, there's going to be a lot of excitement heading into 2025.
Yeah, and kind of keeping the topic of Bryce Young, it seemed like his switch kind of flipped, not just because he got reinserted into the lineup over Andy Dalton, but that Chiefs game, even though they lost a real close game there, Bryce Young had one of his best performances in his career up to that point, really efficient with the football. My question for you, Jared, is when you kind of look at the past stretch of games for him, what do you think has allowed him to kind of be reformed, be that different quarterback? Is it just confidence? Is it the fact that he's back in the lineup? What has propelled him to look like a completely different player?
It's a lot of the confidence and also having more trust in his playmakers, understanding that he can also trust the offensive line, which has been outstanding this season with their offseason additions of Robert Hunt and Damian Lewis. So you look at Bryce Young, you look at the rest of the offense. While it's not a great offense in general, just around him in terms of skill players outside of Chuba Hubbard, you see Young still trusting his guys to make plays at the football, at the catch point, and it has led to some great success. You're seeing David Moore, former Tampa Bay Buccaneer.
Yeah.
So he has come on, and Dave Canales has called him Mr. Consistency as at the position. I mean, I can remember even watching Bucs games being like, David Moore continued to stand out, especially last year with Tampa Bay. So you see him trusting, you see Young trusting more. You're seeing him trust Thielen. Of course, he's going to trust Thielen because he's automatic when you're throwing his direction. He's going to convert any third down you throw his way. And then you got Jalen Coker emerging as an undrafted free agent. Xavier Leggett has had an up and down rookie season. It's been more of a disappointing year for Leggett because you see some of the inconsistencies. He's had some drop issues, but he's also had some injuries that have not only affected his ability to catch the football with consistency, but also just playing at a high level that we expected to see. And if you look at all the key highlights of Leggett before, I would say the Saints game back in week 9, he was making some highlight reel catches, making plays in space. Like, that's the player we were expecting coming out of South Carolina. So you have a group of playmakers, and especially at tight end with Tommy Tremble and Jadavian Sanders, while they are not an above average unit, the biggest thing with Young coming into the season was how could he perform with just an average group of playmakers? And it took a while, took a few different directions, but we're seeing how Young is performing with these average playmakers, and he's succeeding with these playmakers. Just imagine what he could do with another potential free agent addition at wide receiver, maybe adding a playmaker through the draft or free agency. This is a quarterback that I am starting to lean towards declaring, hey, Bryce Young, he's the team's franchise quarterback going forward. It's not up for debate because you see that confidence. You see he's starting to understand it. You know, the meme on TikTok or the little edits going like, oh, I understand it now. That's what we're seeing with Bryce Young. He's starting to understand it, and now he's just playing freely. And it's so nice to see Bryce playing free like he is right now.
Absolutely. And what I want to ask you a little bit more about Bryce Young is, I believe I saw you tweeting about this or responding to a comment on X, and it was talking about CJ Stroud and Bryce Young, and everybody was ready to completely, not to get all Geno Smith, but to completely write off Bryce Young, where everybody was anointing CJ Stroud as like the next big thing. And Stroud's been so-so this year. Obviously, some injuries have piled up for the Texans, and they got smoked on Christmas yesterday watching that game. But you don't always want to compare like every single quarterback that's in the same quarterback class because everyone has their own path. There's different personnel. There's so many different factors. But was everybody too early to completely just dismiss Bryce Young? Like, doesn't that show the importance of patience in this league? And it's tough because in the NFL, it's such a I want this now. This has to happen
Mm-hmm.
now. We need to see progression right away. And I think a great example, and I've used this on the show before, is not even a player on the Buccaneers, but Bucs GM Jason Light. Like, there are many other organizations that the team was not winning right away. Other teams would have moved on from Jason Light, but the Bucs stayed the course. And then Light, got Tom Brady, had success with Baker Mayfield, built out this team, and really was just one piece away. I know it's a little bit different than this Bryce Young situation. But where were you when everybody was, coming with the pitchfork saying this guy's done, it's time to move on?
I was kind of in the middle, and I was definitely leaning towards, just based on the comments Dave Canales was making in press conferences, like it sounded like this was going to be Andy Dalton's team for as long as it was going to be. We didn't know if we were going to see Bryce Young again this season. We didn't know what he would even look like if he were to come back to the lineup. The only reason I think Bryce Young even came back into the lineup is because of a car accident Andy Dalton was in before the Broncos game. And then it was like, all right, let's see what Young can do week by week. And then a couple weeks ago, it looked like Canales was like, yeah, I've seen enough of him. We know he's the guy going forward. We're not even going to entertain, are we going to put Dalton back in? So for me, I definitely put out there on X several times, like, I don't know if Bryce Young is the future of the franchise. I don't know what's next for him.
Yeah,
I think there was at one point where I was like, I think the Panthers are done with Bryce Young. There was definitely that feeling around the organization and around Bryce Young that maybe this is over already. His first two games were pitiful, absolutely just bad football. It was terrible football. And you had to wonder at that time, what was this it for Bryce Young? Were the Panthers like, all right, we're done. We're going to move on, start fresh, just go full rebuild finally this offseason. But now things have changed drastically. That the car accident Andy Dalton was in. And then even before then, his play was it started becoming a little bit subpar. We started seeing the Andy Dalton we had always known post Bengals. Like this is the guy that is going to give you some nice starts, but then he's going to start making mistakes, turn the ball over. And that's what we started to see, especially in that really rough stretch where Carolina seemingly lost every game by 20 plus points or more. So what we have seen is that Dave Canales is trying to establish his culture, trying to establish what he wants with his team. He said in the offseason that he's not going to have any personal, not necessarily any personal attachments to players, but more so like he's going to be objective. He's going to be like middle ground. It doesn't matter whether he likes the player or he doesn't, etc. He's going to want to make sure that he wants an efficient offense. And Andy Dalton gave them at that time the best chance to have an efficient offense. Mm-hmm. Then it started going downhill throughout that month and a half stretch. Then you see Bryce Young coming back in because of basically a freak accident in some way. No one expected Dalton to be in a car accident. Everyone expected Andy Dalton to start against the Bengals. And then Bryce Young, all of a sudden, he's back in the lineup. So what we're seeing is not only Dave Canales growing up as a head coach and also building that culture he wants to instill in Carolina, guys that want to come here and play Panther football, the classic Panther football, which I think we're kind of seeing in some flashes. And then you're seeing his decision-making with the quarterback situation. You're seeing what the Panthers are doing in terms of, all right, we're seeing Young progress. Now we know what he is. And this is the player that not only is showing he's a good quarterback, has been one of the better quarterbacks in the league, in my opinion, over the last 4 or 5 weeks. He is showing that this team needs to start building around him, needs to start adding elite playmakers, and also adding on the defensive side of the ball. So it's been quite the journey from week 2, week 3 to now to where we are with the Carolina Panthers.
And kind of sticking with the offense, so we've talked extensively about Bryce Young, but what about that run game? Against the Cardinals, they had 36 carries, 243 rushing yards, 3 touchdowns. I mean, you look at Chuba Hubbard on the day, he had 152 yards and 2 touchdowns. Heck, even Bryce Young had 68 yards and a touchdown. When you look at that run game, it's a stark difference between what it is now and what it was even last year. I mean, Chuba Hubbard, he's gone from averaging 3.8 yards a carry to 4.8 yards a carry. Dave Canales has kind of rebuilt that run game in Carolina a little bit. How have you seen that run game evolve? I mean, obviously the additions of Lewis and Hunt have added some physicality and some beef to that offensive line. But what else do you think has contributed to their improvement?
I think it's their commitment to run the football, and that can be debatable if you're a Panthers fan, because even though Dave Canales mentioned in the offseason that the team wanted to be stubborn to the run game, they haven't exactly been stubborn enough in certain situation. I mean, I think Bucs fans can attest to that with Dave Canales as a play caller, especially last year. He did have some moments of inconsistency. I think you're still seeing Canales growing as a coach. Even here, he's even been vulnerable about his flaws as a coach and just being open about his newness to being a first-time head coach in this league. He hasn't been a head coach, I don't think, since junior high school. When he first started his career
in California,
yeah. And so what we're seeing with Dave is that, all right, I think he knows that the run game is the strength of this offense, but he also wants to keep it balanced as much as possible, give Bryce Young an opportunity to throw the football around and play freely. But what you're seeing with the run game, you're seeing the offensive line really coming together and blocking downhill, getting to the second level. Duo blocks. I mean, they are just running over people. Robert Hunt, Damian Lewis, and even Cade Mays, who has become a really solid starter for Carolina since coming back to the team from the Giants practice squad. It's been very impressive to see this group come together and just run the football at will. And when they know they can lean on the run game, they're going to lean into it, especially when it's a close ball game, or even if they have a lead like they did Sunday against the Arizona Cardinals. So Chuba Hubbard, I do want to talk about him real quick. He has been outstanding. He's been one of the best running backs in the league, and his development from his rookie year to now kind of goes to show why I believe not only I think all of us can be guilty of impatience with some rookies, some players on their rookie contracts at the very least. And that's, I say this all the time. I sound like a broken record saying this, even posting about it. Progression is never linear. And that's the case with Chuba Hubbard. You know, he had some high-low moments his rookie year. He had the same thing his second year, his sophomore year, then last year becoming really the workhorse running back, then this year becoming one of the better running backs in the league and earning a long-term extension with the Panthers. His progression from a running back that seemingly had no contact balance and was just tripping himself up on the field almost all the time. I think it happened a couple times when the Panthers were playing the Bucs in 2021. And then to see him just having this great frame, his ability to just bounce off would-be tacklers, and then having the acceleration, that second level ability to break tackle angles, pursuit angles, and basically get monster chunk plays. I mean, we saw it against the Giants during one of his career games. He has evolved so well as a player that he is going to be one of the cornerstones of this franchise. And look, I understand where people are in terms of running back value, positional value, etc. But what the Panthers do, their running back position is very valuable. And that, I will say it will be very valuable going forward. Now, when it comes to who's behind him, that was supposed to be Jonathan Brooks. Now he's likely out next year because he retore his ACL from last year.
Yeah, that was tough.
Which I think was probably one of the bigger bummers of the entire league, because everyone was so excited to see Jonathan Brooks. They know what he was capable of at Texas during his junior year. We saw what he was capable of, and he started showing flashes against Tampa Bay. Like that was the game where it was like, oh, Brooks we might have something here with Brooks. And then the unfortunate non-contact injury. So I'm really curious what the Panthers are going to do with the run game next year. I know they can't continue to lean on Hubbard long term, especially with the wear and tear running backs have. Hubbard seems like someone that can handle a workload, a 300 touch workload if he wanted to. But the Panthers will have to figure out a succession plan, and they won't have Brooks next year. So they're going to have to figure out, do we draft a running back day 3? Do we go out and sign another running back, have a little bit of a RB2 competition behind Chuba Hubbard? Do we keep Miles Sanders around? Does Sanders come back at some point before the end of the season, either this weekend or next weekend? So there's a lot of factors there, but Chuba Hubbard's development and what the Panthers have done up front has been beyond impressive this season. I mean, it's probably the biggest highlight to this point outside of Bryce Young's development.
Interesting. So let me ask you, like, looking at this matchup between the Bucs and the Panthers, like, your overall outlook of Tampa Bay, what are your thoughts on them?
Tampa Bay is an interesting team just from my perspective because, like, I follow a lot of you guys, follow people, former Pewter Report people, follow Trevor Sekema, Pewter Report legend, and a good friend, John Ledger. It's been interesting.
We got a good coaching tree.
Yes, big coaching tree. It's been fascinating to see how you guys have been reacting to Tampa Bay. I'm kind of on the same page with you guys that there are so many inconsistencies. Like, why was Rachaad White getting the ball late against Dallas on that final drive when it should have been Bucky Irving? Bucky Irving has been playing outstanding football. Give him the freaking rock, man. I mean, this dude is going to be a star for this offense as long as they can keep Baker on healthy, continue to play well. It's also been frustrating to see that with all the talent that Tampa Bay has. I mean, I feel like Tampa Bay is one of the more talented teams out there, especially on the offensive side of the ball. And they continue to have these stretches of like, are they actually going to make the playoffs? Do they look like a great football team? A lot of the inconsistency frustrates me as an outside viewer, knowing that Tampa Bay, they probably could be a 12-win team right now. But there are so many inconsistencies, especially on both sides of the ball and with play calling, that you have to go and start questioning, does Todd Bowles even come back next year? Especially if Tampa Bay does not come, or if Tampa Bay is unable to get the job done the next 2 weeks, and hope Atlanta stumbles this coming weekend and also next weekend against Carolina. It looks a little dicey, and that loss, that was a heartbreaking loss. I felt so bad for Tampa Bay, and especially Baker.
It was a bad loss. It was a bad loss to the Cowboys. There's no doubt about it. Now, the reason why Bucky Irving wasn't in late there is because the Bucs were down by so much that they had to throw it more. So the big thing for that is they trust Rachaad White the most. He's the best in their pass protection. So if they knew they were going to throw it a ton, that's why Bucky wasn't in. But the Bucs do use 21 personnel a lot. And I was talking about this with Rick Stroud the other day. Like, at that point, just get your best players on the field at the same time. So you can have Rachaad White still pass block and let Bucky go out and do his thing. So I agree with you. There are so many inconsistencies with this Bucs team on both sides of the ball. And we'll talk about the Bucs defense as well. One thing where there's not an inconsistency at all is Celsius energy drinks, the official energy drink of PewterReport.com. They're always consistent, having fantastic flavors, whether it's the Arctic Vibe, my personal favorite, or some of the ones you see on the screen there, like the sparkling watermelon lemonade as well. So if you need to know where to find a Celsius energy drink, head on over to the Celsius store locator on their website, punch in your address, and tell you the closest place where you could pick one up. Could be a Walmart, a Publix, a health and fitness store, a Stop and Shop, or your bodega.
Bodega.
And once you keep going to your bodega and you know you love Celsius and you want more, you can get it in bulk over on Amazon with the subscribe and save and have it sent to your place of residence whenever you want. I'd recommend the variety pack because there's so many fantastic flavors of Celsius, and you can have it sent at your leisure. You just decide when you want to get it. So just make sure you're drinking Celsius energy drinks, the official energy drink of pewterreport.com. Looking at the Bucs offense going up against the Panthers defense, even when the Bucs aren't on their A game, they're still scoring a good amount of points. So how would you go about trying to slow down Tampa Bay's offense and Baker Mayfield?
Oh man, that's a tough question because all Tampa Bay could probably do Sunday is run the football. Run the football, Baker Mayfield can have 15 pass attempts. I think Tampa Bay would win the football game because there are execution issues on the offensive side of the ball, which makes me a little hesitant about really trusting that defensive side of the ball for Carolina. They have the worst run defense in the NFL by far. They are allowing the most points per game of any team in the league. This is not a good defense at all. I've talked about this a lot in depth for Panthers Wire, and also about Ejiro Evero, about his future in Carolina. This is an interesting time for Evero to really prove himself as a quality defensive coordinator, put his players in the best position possible to succeed. Unfortunately, he has not been able to do that enough because of the talent deficiency on that side of the ball. I think Evero is kind of stuck with the current system he has to install for these group of players because the floor is so low, especially up front for this Panthers defense, that even you add an average player to that defensive line, that is an immediate upgrade, an immediate contributor, someone that's going to make that defense better. A'Shaun Robinson has had a pretty strong season, in my opinion. Getting pressure on the quarterback, he's been one of the more bright spots along that defensive front. But after that, the depth is just decimated. I'm at the point where it's like you have no NFL caliber talents. You have UFL talents, but no legitimate NFL talents that have proven their worth to be effective up front in defending your run. They're always getting pushed back 3 to 4 yards beyond the line of scrimmage. It is mind-boggling to see how bad this run defense is. And they're starting to have injuries up front at the linebacker. Trevor Wallace out for the remainder of the season with a shoulder injury. He'll have a procedure done during the offseason. And now they're down to Jacoby Windman alongside Josie Jewell, who there's a chance he may not even play this weekend. So now you got Jacoby Windman, an undrafted free agent from Michigan State, starting at linebacker. Then you have an inconsistent safety group, which I think is a critical aspect of Evero's defense because you need that quality single high safety and someone that can play the run downhill.
Yeah.
So to say that there's a path for the Panthers defense to have success against the Bucs, I think there is. You have to really get after the quarterback. I think they've shown to do that a lot better over the last several weeks, especially, I would say, since DJ Wonnum returned to the starting lineup against the New York Giants. He had a lot going on in terms of rehab. He was dealing with blood clots at one point, so just a lot of serious stuff. And then coming back and making his debut for the Panthers, he's been a big piece of why that pass rush has improved. I would expect kind of the same thing, what we saw against Tampa Bay this weekend in Tampa with the Panthers pass rush. In terms of the secondary, you're going to have the moments of Carolina blowing coverages because of miscommunication on the back end, mainly from the safeties. The Panthers benched Jordan Fuller this past weekend because he's been ineffective, straight up. And Damani Richardson has shown to be a better player at this point. Even though he might be serviceable at this point of his career, it's impressive to see an undrafted free agent like Richardson making an impact to this point. So for the Panthers, I I want to see them play with more consistency as a pass rush unit, but also make enough stops against the Bucs offense and make just one good tackle in the run game to really set the tone defensively and be able to make some key stops, allow the offense to play ball control football. That's really what I want to see from this defense.
Yeah, and you kind of talked about the defense. That was going to be my question. And when you look at the Panthers defense, I mean, it's a mix of veterans and like these undrafted free agents. You mentioned Jacoby Windman. He led the team in tackles with 8 tackles. He had a sack in really his first NFL game. But you mentioned the Bucs offense, and the talent that they have, and the Panthers defensive line struggling. I mean, the Bucs offensive line has been one of the best in the business. And with the Panthers' weakness really being up front, do you see that probably being the biggest talent gap between the two teams going into Sunday?
Yeah. I mean, there is a significant talent gap up front with the Panthers defensive, with at least the Panthers defensive front. I mean, Jadeveon Clowney, he's been a really solid veteran presence, but I don't think he's been as effective as you would want to see. He'll still be on the team next year. I think he'll be an effective pass rusher next year, but it'll depend on the defensive scheme, whether or not Evero's back, whether or not they decide to bring a new guy in, maybe Robert Saleh, a friend of Dave Canales. But besides the point, when I'm watching this Panthers defense week in and week out, I feel like there is a significant talent deficiency when they're playing against any offensive line. Like, this is a bad defensive line. Their pass rush group is okay. It's still a below average unit, but they are getting after the quarterback in different ways, sending more pressure. And I think that credit should go to Evero for being a little bit more aggressive with the pass rush unit. Now that he's starting to get some guys healthy, some guys that have come back from injury. So I think Tampa Bay, they're going to have some issues, especially with Carolina, because I think Carolina's pass rushers have done a much better job with rush lane discipline and also beating their respective mans up front. In the run game, of course, that's probably going to be the biggest issue for them. Is Tampa Bay will likely run the ball all over them like they did a few weeks ago. And it wouldn't shock me if Bucky Irvin had another monster performance against the Panthers defense this coming weekend. It's one of those things where you just got to hope the Panthers make a couple of stops defensively to give your offense a chance. The only reason why the Panthers were in overtime against Tampa Bay was their defense basically gave up the lead. It's simple as that. You're forcing your offense to be in a less than 0 or at least a 0 margin for error system that is you're having to put in trust on a defense that's just depleted of talent outside JC Horn. And I don't know if even maybe a healthy Derek Brown would make this run defense a little bit better, but probably not that much because it's not a great unit there. So if Bucs fans are expecting a good run game this weekend, they're probably going to get it. So I would be shocked if the Panthers held Tampa Bay to less than 150 yards rushing, or even 175 yards rushing. It's that bad. It is really that bad.
Yeah, so keep that in mind for Bucky Irving and his over-under on rushing yards. Maybe even Rashad White, too. Last thing from us, Jared, and we appreciate your time so much.
Yeah.
What is your prediction for this game, especially with their first matchup going into overtime? Is it going to be another close one?
I think it will be another close one. Carolina's playing some inspired football right now. Bryce Young is playing as, like I said earlier, one of the better quarterbacks in the league in the last few weeks. The run game for Carolina has been outstanding with Chuba Hubbard, especially him winning Player of the Week from this past weekend. It's going to be another close game. I think you're going to see you're probably going to see some of the same issues for Carolina show up, some of the execution problems, some of some of the misfires. Young has, a misfire or 2 or 3 every game. So you're probably going to see those, but you're going to see a different Bryce Young, or maybe even the same Bryce Young that you saw against Tampa Bay a few weeks ago. So this is going to be a very close game. I think Carolina's defense has done enough over the last few weeks to put their offense in a position to go downfield and score. So maybe this might be another overtime game, but I think Tampa Bay does win this football game, save their playoff hopes. I do not, my trust in the Panthers defense, especially the run defense, is totally gone. So I'm expecting a Bucs win, but it'll be close. It'll be close all the way through the fourth quarter. And I think it'll probably come down to either a late Buccaneers touchdown or a field goal as time expires. It's going to be another close game, in my opinion, especially with Carolina traveling to Tampa Bay. This should be a good one.
And then everybody that's a Bucs fan will be rooting for the Panthers the following week when they go up against the Atlanta Falcons. Well, Jared, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. We really appreciate your time. Just let everybody know where they can follow you on social media and where they can see all of your work.
So for X, Blue Sky, Threads, you can find me at JRod NFL Draft. You can also find a lot of my writing at the Panthers Wire. I also do some stuff for Jags Wire. So I do some stuff for them on occasion, but mostly a lot of my Panthers work will be at the Panthers Wire.
All right, cool. Awesome. Everybody make sure you check it out. And thank you once again for joining today's show.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right, let's hear a message from our friends over at Walk-Ons.
Yeah, so what happened out there tonight?
We struck out at home with leftovers, then we remembered Walk-Ons.
What effect did the situation have?
Spirit soared. Nick took on a burger, Jen obliterated her ribeye po' boy, and speaking of spirits, Laura even scored a real tasty cocktail. She needed that.
Any lessons learned today?
Yeah. Head straight to Walk-Ons.
Scratch-made dishes, wall-to-wall TVs, craft beers, and cocktails. Walk-Ons for the win.
I've missed talking about our friends over at Walk-Ons with the holiday coming up. So they'll be back to somewhat of a regular schedule. Obviously, New Year's is next week. But make sure you check out Walk-Ons, especially during the week. They have happy hour every single day from Monday through Friday. Tuesday especially is great, the all-day happy hour, including $5 Tito's. They have other fantastic deals, including the $3 happy hour pours, $4 house wines, and then, of course, some great starters like fried pickles, the Boom Boom Shrimp Queso Dip, and their wings are always spot on. And then game day specials, if you're going to Walk-Ons on a Friday or Saturday or Sunday specifically, you're watching some college football. Maybe you're watching the Bucs there on Sunday and some of the other important games that are going on. They have Michelob Ultra, Bud Light, and Budweiser pints for $4.49. You can upgrade to a 22-ounce for $5.99. Also get $5 Heineken Silvers and $5 Neutrals as well. So Walk-Ons is the place to be. There's 3 locations in the Tampa Bay area, one over in Lakeland, another in Wesley Chapel, and a third over at Midtown, pretty close to Raymond James Stadium. So if you want to watch football, have a great time with great food and drink, Walk-Ons is your spot. Shout out to our friends over at Walk-Ons. All right, some of you have been patiently waiting with your super chats. We really appreciate it. So we're going to get to that, talk about the injury report, and some other Bucs topics as well. So thank you, everybody. Let's start it off with Tommy Leverone. Thank you for the $4.99 super chat. As Tommy says, hi, guys. Huge game Sunday. Bucs need a win. And how are the Bucs salary cap-wise for 2025? Is there a chance we can re-sign Godwin? Great show as always. Thank you very much for the kind words. And yes, they are in a pretty good financial situation going into 2025. They don't have the biggest room like some of the other teams, but it's certainly not like it was over the past 2 seasons. And last year was all about re-signing their own guys.
Everyone. Yeah.
It was Baker, it was Mike, Levante, and the list goes on and on and on. This year, yes, there might be talks about a contract extension to Luke Gedeke, which would be great. But really, when it comes to re-signing their own guys, Chris Godwin is the biggest one. And a lot of us believe, I mean, Scott Reynolds put his stamp of approval that Chris Godwin was going to be back next season. So, anything can happen. Teams can throw a crazy amount of money, but likely the odds are that Chris Godwin is back in red and pewter this next season.
Yeah, I'd say so. And unless a team's throwing him like a T. Higgins, like T. Higgins will be paid this offseason. If somebody throws Chris Godwin that amount of money, like near $30 million a year, maybe he goes and signs somewhere else, but I don't think Godwin will. He loves Tampa Bay. And when you look at the cap situation, the Bucs are in a healthy spot. Like the fact that they can extend one of Gedeke, maybe Zion McCollum or Kate Otten to a lengthier deal. They don't really have free agents this year. They signed all the big fish last offseason.
Yes.
I mean, outside of Levante David, you're not looking at losing too many players, maybe re-signing a Ben Bredesen or like a lesser player. But Bucs are in a good spot salary cap wise. And again, credit Jason Light and Mike Greenberg for all their wizardry on that front.
And let's remember too, like there will be some other adjustments, like they might let some guys go based on, opening up some more salary cap room. And yes, Mike Greenberg doing his thing as well. And it's funny because the last time that Godwin was available to hit the free agent market, he was one of the top receivers available again. It was like him and Mike Williams, and Williams got that big contract, and injuries kind of, really hurt him. But now it's not weird, but I guess it's, it's a compliment to Chris Godwin that once again, outside of T. Higgins, it's Chris Godwin is going to get the attention of a lot of people. But moving on, thanks to Paul Morales for this $9.99 super chat. As Paul says, happy holidays, Pewter Peeps. Thank you. Happy holidays to you. Here we are yet again making the end of the season interesting. I'm conflicted about missing or making the playoffs. Defense can't take us far in the playoffs. Thoughts? Adam, why don't you start?
Yeah, I mean, if you're a Bucs fan, you would hopefully want them to make the playoffs because at this point, if they were to lose out, they wouldn't really get that good draft position. I mean, they have 8 wins right now, so you want to root them on and you want to see them finish the season on a high note. But when you mention the defense, that is kind of the weakest link, and that'll be what holds the Bucs back in how far they go in the playoffs. Because you look at the offense, it's a Super Bowl caliber offense. I mean, Jared Feinberg said it when he was on the show. We've seen it all season, Matt, from Liam Cohen directing things, Baker Mayfield playing at a Pro Bowl level, even better than he did last year, the run game firing on all cylinders. A lot of it will come back to the defense. And there was a big injury with someone being added to the injured reserve that we could talk about in a little bit. But just so many injuries, guys not really living up to their potential, the pass rush really not getting home. There's a lot of inconsistencies on that side of the ball that will kind of hold the team back.
Yeah, well, I mean, in terms of whether or not you want them to make the playoffs, let's remember, like, this is a bad year to be a bad team. For example, the Chicago Bears have not won since October. They're a 4-win football team. They're on the mind because they played tonight on Thursday Night Football against the Seahawks. The Bears right now have like the 8th or 9th pick. Compared to last year, the Washington Commanders, I believe, had 4 wins. They had the second overall pick and drafted Jaden Daniels. So this is not the year that you want to have a worse record to get a better draft spot because it's not going to help you that much. Whether the Bucs win out down the stretch or lose out down the stretch, they're still going to be picking, anywhere between like 15 to 20 or higher, depending on how much further they go into the playoffs. So I wouldn't worry too much about trying to get a good draft spot. And as we've seen, Jason Light can find good talent anywhere. Bucky Irving, a 4th-round pick, taking small school guys and turning them into starting offensive linemen. He does it over and over and over again. So I wouldn't get too caught up in, where exactly they're going to land in the draft. And we'll have plenty of time to talk about the draft as well. But as far as like this season being similar, yes, the last 2 years, it's almost like deja vu. Once again, just a team that loses many in a row, then they win many in a row, then they have a chance to really put themselves in a great position. Like, remember last year, they lost to the Saints at home on New Year's Eve. They could have clinched the division then they had to win Carolina. This year,
an ugly game.
Win out, you're good to go, but you lose to the Cowboys, so you got to hope that the Commanders take care of business against the Falcons on Sunday night, with the Bucs, of course, winning out too. So, yeah, a lot of similarities in the head coaching tenure of Todd Bowles. Let's go to Eric Moreno. Thank you, Eric, for this $5 super chat. Says, chances Kate Otten plays Sunday and any concern with Dean limited. The injury report says knees may be precautionary. Adam, I think this is a good time to read off the injury report and talk about the big IR move that happened today.
Yeah, so Eric, thank you for the super chat. Sticking with K. Dotton, he was outside today at the Advent Health Training Center, but he had a brace on his left knee. You kind of saw that last week. And with him not playing last week, him not participating the first 2 days of this week, it doesn't look likely that he's going to play, which would mean more opportunities for Payne Durham. Payne was someone that Liam Cohen talked about today, and it kind of sounds like he's going to have to step into that role, and hopefully the experience will help him moving forward. But the other big injury offensively is Sterling Shepard. It sounds like Ryan Miller is going to be the guy to kind of step up and fill his shoes, along with some of the other guys in the room. And then a good development was Graham Barton after not participating with an illness.
Yeah.
He was a full participant today. But the big news, something that Scott Reynolds wrote about earlier today on pewterreport.com, was Christian Izien was placed on the injured reserve with a torn pectoral muscle. And that was something that Jordan Whitehead went on the injured reserve for. So yet another injury for the secondary, Matt. As soon as one guy gets healthy, another guy gets injured. It's like last season with the cornerback position. Jamel Dean, Carlton Davis are flip-flopping. But the Bucs are running out of safeties. No Antoine Winfield Jr.
It's absolutely insane, right? Like they finally get some good news. Hey, Jordan Whitehead, they open up the practice
2 days
window
later
for him. There's a chance, and then bam, 2 days later, Christian Izien with the same injury, with the pec injury,
what are the
goes
odds?
on injured reserve. And remember, they were hoping that Izien could play last week when it wasn't sure that Mike Edwards was going to come back and Antoine was still out, and obviously Whitehead was still out. So it is just crazy how many injuries they've had at safety. As you mentioned, like Ryan Neal having to play, Kayvon Merriweather, they brought back from Detroit to get him going. And finally, Whitehead comes back, but you lose Izien, who brings a little bit of a different skill set than Whitehead does. And we'll see if the recharged batteries of Whitehead will help, because he was great at the beginning of the year. Yeah, and I think those injuries really piled up, and there were some issues. But, hopefully it's not even guaranteed that he's going to be able to play. Like Bo said earlier this week, we'll see. We'll see how he runs, all this stuff. So, I mean, if Whitehead can't play, the Bucs are absolutely screwed. And I don't even know what to think about Antoine Winfield Jr. if he's even going to end up coming back this season. I mean, hopefully maybe the Bucs win out and the Commanders beat the Falcons, and Winfield can come back for the playoffs. But again, like, that's not a guarantee at this point by any means. So we'll see how it goes for the Bucs. I mean, you want to have good depth so you can have some like insurance at really every single position, but that's not always easy to do. But if you want to have the best insurance in the Tampa Bay area, there's nobody better to work with than our friends over at Brier Greaves. And if you're a longtime podcast listener, you probably remember the late great Mark Cook talking about Brier Greaves Insurance. Pewter Report Scott Reynolds has been a Brier Greaves customer for years, and there simply isn't a better insurance company in the Tampa Bay area. Visit BrierGreavesInsurance.com to see for yourself. Brier Greaves Insurance is family owned, and their main goal is helping people. And that's because helping people is the best way to ensure that everybody is safe and good to go in the Tampa Bay area. They find the right insurance policy for you and your family, whether that's home or auto, maybe boating insurance. Obviously, there's a lot of boating going on in this area, or business insurance. Turn to Brier Greaves and find out why their personal touch and customer service sets them apart. The days of waiting on hold to speak with an insurance representative that you don't even know are over. With Brier Greaves Insurance, you'll have a relationship with your agent who can answer your questions and advise you on the best policies. As 2 recent hurricanes have shown all of us that live in the Tampa Bay area, there is a cost to living in paradise. Brier Greaves can help make sure you have the right hurricane and flood insurance to make sure you and your home are protected. So visit BrierGreavesInsurance.com today. That's Brier, B-R-I-E-R. Once again, B-R-I-E-R, Greaves, G-R-I-E-V-E-S. Once again, G-R-I-E-V-E-S. Or call their office today at 813-876-4166. That's 813-876-4166. 888-866-4166 and tell them that Pewter Report sent you. So give them a call. Shout out to our friends over at Brier Greaves.
Matt, I did want to
go
make
ahead.
one more comment on Christian Izien and just kind of going over the impact that he's had on the Bucs defense this season, because coming into the year with Jordan Whitehead being signed and the other safety spot being filled by Antoine Winfield Jr., there wasn't really a set spot for Christian Izien, but he still started 10 games this year, played 75% of the defense's snaps, and has made 75 tackles. So when you kind of look at all the injuries across the secondary, Christian Izien was like that one constant guy that has been on the field. And now with him out, we kind of alluded to all the other safety injuries. One of Antoine Winfield Jr., Mike Edwards, and Jordan Whitehead has to be back, because who else is going to play? Kayvon Merriweather even got injured, and he was limited on practice this week. Who's going to play at safety?
Yeah, it's a good question. They got a couple of guys on the practice squad like Marcus Banks, but they're very inexperienced players. But at some point, there's not much more that you can do. So we will closely monitor that. We'll keep the super chats rolling in. Thanks to Bucs Basement for the $4.99 super chat. Says Canales was the better head coach in game one. Outcoached Bowles. I don't want to make the playoffs because I want Bowles fired. Play spoilers, Panthers head coach Cohen. Yeah, I mean, that's another factor in all of this. If you want to say Canales got the better of Bowles, I think you could say that with the Bucs offense against the Panthers offense against the Panthers offense against the Bucs defense.
Yeah.
I think that was certainly the advantage for Canales. I mean, we wondered how it was going to go with two coaches that know each other so well, but the great equalizer is the Bucs offense. That's why they keep their team in every single game.
Yeah, and I think that instance of the first matchup, it was just a case of like two teams trending in different directions. I mean, when you look at the Panthers offense, they're trending up. The Bucs defense, they've kind of been trending down. They had that brief run in the Chargers game in the second half where they did well, but otherwise it's a unit that's really underperformed. And when you look at, I don't even know if it's Canales really outcoaching Bowles. I think it's just the defense, you know what it is now, and it's not that great because they don't have playmakers, they don't have a pass rush. And if the run defense isn't going to the point where you can make a team one-dimensional and kind of predict where things are going, that's where the struggles are going to lie.
Right. Their performance against the Giants and Raiders, you have to do that against the two worst teams in the league. And them doing it against the Chargers, that was an anomaly. And they just so happened to come all within 3 games of each other. So, but yeah, how they looked against the Cowboys is what they've been really all season long. And Bucs Basement has another super chat. Thank you for the $1.99. Says, wish Bowles took ownership of his many flaws. Yeah, that's one thing that I think Bucs fans have the right to be bothered about is he doesn't throw people under the bus. There's no doubt about that. But he also never really takes personal blame for stuff that goes on. He'll just say, we got to do this better. We got to tackle better. We got to coach it better. And that starts with all of us. He never says that starts with me. He never says, oh, like, I wish I should have called the timeout then or not called the timeout. He's done this throughout his coaching tenure, being the head coach of the Bucs, of just doubling down even on his mistakes instead of just kind of owning up to it. And I think it's hurt his image a little bit in terms of why Bucs fans are breaking down the door for Liam Cohen. Yeah,
that was a great point. And I know this comment's alluding to Dave Canales kind of talking about, like, Dave Canales, when he was offensive coordinator for the Bucs, he was so open about his mistakes and his learning. And he's done that with the Panthers. And you look at Todd Bowles and like the latest example of him not saving that timeout. And then his explanation was like, just felt like we had to use the timeout. Like, you could have just said, it was my mistake. We're going to learn from it. I'm going to manage the game better. You know, just something simple as that, I think would go a long way for Bucs fans, because when Bucs fans see a loss, like, they're quick to point out Bowles and his many flaws for those reasons.
Yeah, it's true, and hopefully something gets fixed. We have a couple super chats from Eric Moreno. Thank you, Eric, for the $2 super chat. And two $2 super chats. Starts off with, or they're both the same, saying, odd in a game time decision for Sunday, probably. That's likely the case. I mean, he's one of the guys you got to pay most attention to. We have seen how they look without Cade Otton. I'm not saying it's better, but I think the Bucs can still get by with Payne Durham. But clearly you want to have your best, your best players available and your best at each position. And you all are the best when it comes to joining our Pewter Report YouTube channel, joining our membership. So we want to say thank you to our new Pewter Report TV channel members that have joined us recently. Juan Hernandez, Penn Wallace, Michael Beckman, yours true, James Chouinard, Colt B, JB, CL, Sunshine Susie, Horse Renor, Sean McDonald, Neil Alexander, Adam Gonzalez, ZA Rover or Czar Rover, and Brian Tampa. Thank you all so much for your support. Welcome to our Pewter Report TV channel. Also want to give a big thank you to our Pewter Platinum members, the highest membership you can have. Thanks to Scott Federico, Rafael Gordon, Noah Parr, Scotty J, Dave Anderson, Eric McMillan, and Zach Jarvis. We appreciate your support. And last but not least, our Pewter Premier channel members. Thank you all so much. There's a lot of names here, so we're not going to read them off, but we will keep it on the ticker tape as we keep the show rolling on. And by the way, if you are a Pewter Platinum or Premier member, we will have a Pewter Insider tomorrow at 1:30. The topic is, will Carolina spoil Tampa Bay's playoff hopes? And, of course, we'll answer every question and comment that comes on during the chat. And you can feel free to pre-write one as well if you're not able to join, and we will answer it on the show. So thanks, everybody, for your support. Moving on, shout out to Meets McGee. Thank you for the $5 super chat, who says, I'm late to the show, but they're labeling Bryce Young a coach killer. Well, it's interesting because Dave Canales has been called a coach killer because teams that he beat, they either end up firing their coach or the teams that he beat are eliminated from the playoffs. Remember, Panthers beat the Saints. They fired Dennis Allen. They just beat the Cardinals last week, eliminated the Cardinals from the playoffs. So, yeah, again, we live in an overreactive NFL world where as soon as someone's bad, it's like, oh, my God, this guy's awful. There's no way he'll ever regroup. I mean, is Baker Mayfield not the perfect example of someone that maybe it takes a little bit of time, and now the Bucs have their quarterback of the franchise for the next couple of years?
Yeah, circumstances and situations matter more than anything. I mean, you mentioned Geno Smith earlier in the show, Sam Darnold in New York. Like, those guys, they flamed out, but they've revived their careers just based on being around systems and kind of learning under different coaches. Like, coaches matter. And like, you put Sam Darnold back in New York, he's probably going to look like the Sam Darnold of old.
Yeah.
But in Minnesota with Kevin O'Connell and that offensive system, he's thriving and having a career year. So when you look at it, like, Bryce Young starting to play better. And I think that's a product of Dave Canales really just kind of understanding his role and being a mentor for him.
Absolutely. That's very true. Mike Wells, thanks for the $10 super chat. It says, awesome show, you guys. Thank you very much. What are your thoughts on Jamel Dean going into next season, given his injuries and big cap hit? Could he be cut for more cap space? He is certainly one of the big options the Bucs will have to think about this offseason, because we saw it last year or last offseason with Carlton Davis. They traded him, and that took a lot of money off of the books. The big question is, so like last year, you trade Carlton, you still have Jamel Dean, you had Zion McCollum ready to go. The question is, where do you go at corner to replace Jamel Dean? Do you draft a rookie and hope and pray and hold on for dear life? Do you sign a different veteran corner that might be available? How much more are you signing him for? How much less are you signing him for with Jamel Dean? If the Bucs already have that plan in place, or they truly, truly believe that they have their guy at corner that they want to draft, and they'll have a young tandem with Zion and this rookie, then I'm for it. But sometimes the grass isn't always greener. I understand the frustrations with Jamel Dean, but what's the game plan outside of that? Because if there's not a great option, it's just, hey, we hope this rookie works out. I don't love that. And then you have to spend a first-round pick on a corner, maybe a second-round pick. I know Zion worked out, but that took a couple of years of development. And the Bucs are in win-now mode, so they don't really have that time for an important position like corner to kind of wait until they figure it out.
Yeah, you make a great point. And earlier in the year, I was kind of thinking that the Bucs maybe would cut Jamel Dean just to save, I think it's like $8 to $10 million in cap space and reallocate that elsewhere. But you really can't get a veteran corner for any cheaper. And Jamel Dean, for all his flaws and not getting an interception. I mean, he has one this year now, but he's a solid coverage corner and just kind of being the veteran presence in the room. Yes, his availability is a concern as well as the playmaking lack thereof, but I don't think the Bucs are ready to throw a premium draft pick in a corner and just expect him to be a day one starter. I mean, that's not a smart plan if you're building out a team.
Yeah.
I think the better route would be to keep Jamel Dean at least for another season. You have Zion McCollum around, and then maybe get another rookie that you can kind of grow and develop. Jason Light, he's done a great job identifying different secondary players. He drafted Carlton Davis and Jamel Dean really close together. I think that's kind of the strategy going forward.
I think that's the exact way they should go about it. So a fantastic point and reasoning from you right there. And we'll have plenty of time to talk about the future of the Buccaneers because they're still in the present and they want to make the postseason for another consecutive year. So we're going to wrap up this show, no pun intended to the presents that you were wrapping for the holidays. But there's still plenty of Bucs content coming out. We will have the Pewter pregame show coming up on Sunday, December 29th. Shout out to my buddy John, whose birthday that is that day. That'll be at 9 o'clock. We'll preview Bucs versus Panthers, look at a couple of more individual matchups, give the latest injury updates for those players as well. And then at 1 o'clock on that Sunday as well, we'll have the Pewter Game Day show, myself and Josh Capo giving live reactions to everything going on in Bucs versus Panthers that hopefully ends up with the Bucs win. And then we'll have the Pewter post-game show coming up after it. So a lot more of things to come for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. In the meantime, if you're not already doing so, please follow us on our social media on X, Facebook, and Instagram. We're at Pewter Report, and a YouTube. Our channel is Pewter Report TV. Please like and subscribe. Leave a comment as well on this video. So that's going to do it for us. Thanks again to Jared Feinberg for joining us earlier on the show. And for Adam Slavon, I'm Matt Matera saying thanks everybody for watching. Happy holidays once again, and we'll see you soon for another Pewter Report podcast. Out.